this area was forested, and there ain't hardly a tree in sight. What's happened is the land was desolate. For thousands of years, nobody cared. It says the land will go desolate because no one cared. And so what we're doing right now is we're saying we care. And we're coming and planting these trees, and this plant is disappearing.
Radio's clear channel. We got a fire in the valley. Wind's picking up. We can get under pretty quick. You guys meet me at the gate or ASAP.
The ruins shall be rebuilt. This land that was desolate has become like the Garden of Eden. And the waste, desolate, and ruined cities are now fortified and inhabited. Then the nations which are left all around you shall know that I, the Lord, have rebuilt the ruined places and planted what was desolate. I, the Lord, have spoken it. I will do it, says God.
Years ago, I believe that that's when the desolation began, was with the Romans. Really, the land was thriving at that time. Josephus talks about it, that the soil was rich enough that the lazy man was compelled to farm it. He also talks about the destruction. When Rome came in to destroy these cities, he talks about the destruction of the forestry around each city. And even of Jerusalem, he talks about that in the first siege, they cleared the trees back to the first ridgeline, and then the second siege, they cleared it back to the second ridgeline. So that was the beginning of the desolation that happened. All of these things led to massive erosion, massive tree loss, and that culminated with the Ottomans when they taxed the trees. That was the final blow. Right after that time period is when you started seeing the trickle of Jews coming back to the land of Israel, the return of the exiles. And what came with that was this process of redemption, this process of the greening of Israel coming back.
For the past 15 years, HaYovel is bringing Christian volunteers to farm the land of Israel alongside local Jews. The family-run nonprofit organization believes it's important for Christians around the world to come stand by the state of Israel. What began as a grassroots effort has now expanded to bringing up to 500 people a year. Mainly from North America, the volunteers see the work as a proof of their faith in God.
It's been quite a journey from the beginning. We were farming, living off the land, and Dad made his first trip here to Israel in 2004. He saw the Bible happening, tangible Word of God happening right in front of him for the first time in his life. And he said, why are we as Christians not a part of this, not a part of what God's doing? The Word of God literally says that the mountains are going to come to life, and why are we not a part of this?
So for years we worked in the wine with the vineyards, helping the farmers. It was a lot of people were farming grapes, and it was a huge thing. And my heart was always in it to see the land of Israel greened again. And when I saw a vineyard covering land, that was desolation turning over and becoming green. And that's what always really drew my heart to it. And for years, I always thought, one day there'll be other ways of greening the land. There'll be trees planted here. There'll be, forest. And that was always like a dream of, one day I'd be able to be a part of, seeing the land greened in other ways. For years and years, we planted thousands of vineyards. And that was a great, great way to do it. And we still do that. We're still going to do that. Personally, when I started to think about, hey, we could help with this too. Things are growing, more volunteers are coming, and we could help actually plant forest. And I sat down with my brother Nate, and we just had this dreaming session where we just wrote down everything we could dream of, and we just said, what if we did this? What if we, went through the ancient history and wrote down every kind of tree that we could think about that would be an ancient, native tree to Israel. Let's just dream big, and we want to bring it back to what it was 2,000 years ago. And then we both looked at each other, we're like, you know what? We don't have a clue about forestry.
Forestry is not like vegetable farming where you plant a tomato and something didn't work and you do something different next year. Forest is there for 50 years. And it's something that, you don't realize your mistakes for 50 years. The forest is there for much longer than that, but you don't realize your mistakes for a long time. But I said that we need to go deeper into this. And that's when Rod showed up.
So we had a volunteer trip that had just come in, and guys come from all over the place, and this one guy stood out, and just an incredible guy. And Nate and I, we started talking with him, and different conversations, and a couple days already into this, it was like a 3-week trip or something. This guy Raj, we started talking to him like, hey, Josh, Raj, whatever. We started talking more and more throughout the days, and finally it came up. So what do you do, back home? And he says, well, I'm a forestry guy. They call me America's tree guy. That's what we're like. Yeah, could you say that again?
I have never been satisfied with the ordinary. And whatever the crowd is doing, I want to go the other way, but I want to go to the other way. It's fairly extreme. I originally come from a farm in Ohio, and there we had lots of trees. From there, after I graduated from Ohio State, I said, I just don't want to go back and milk cows anymore, and so I left the farm. And I ended up down in the Virgin Islands and worked for Mr. Lawrence Rockefeller for 6 years at his resort properties as his youngest manager that ever took care of his properties. And I was taking care of all these trees. Well, after 6 years, looked for an opportunity, found one here in South Georgia, and we've lived on St. Simon's Island since 1985. During that first 23 years, I was in charge of the Cloister Grounds. It's a 5-star, 5-diamond resort. It's located nearby. That's where I got involved with the largest tree project, moving project that's ever been done. One of the reasons that there aren't trees growing on the hillsides of Judea and Samaria for 2,000 years is because once the trees, natural trees, were stripped off of it, that began the process of what we were talking about just a little bit ago with mycorrhizal fungal and having a humus matter that would stay there and support the trees and kind of regenerate it. Once those were stripped, the rains literally washed the topsoil into the valley, and with that, all the nutrients and the mycorrhizal fungal that's necessary for these trees to live. So even though you had a few seedlings come and start up they couldn't support the plant because these fungus materials, rooting generators, were not in the soil. And so you got these hillsides that are just very barren. And now you're down to a rock base. And now we're hoping to put in trees. Well, you've got, number one, you have no microclimate, which is, a microclimate is a special set of growing environment for certain trees or plant materials. It's just special for that plant. But they're completely wide open now, and you don't have any seeds floating around. And if they do land, then they're hitting hard surface and they're sprouting and dying. And so that's where we had to figure out, how are we going to get these trees to grow? Number one, we have to get them in the ground, and it's all rock. But number two, it's not only that, but then we got to figure out how to get water to them, to at least get them started, and then have the right products around them to say, okay, we're a tree, it's going to be tough, but we're going to get started here. And once they get started, we start to create this microclimate with some small trees growing around each other, starting to produce shade underneath them for other plant material. Then all of a sudden this new mycorrhizal and rhizosphere takes off and begins to grow, and then all of a sudden the hillsides will begin to green.
So the first spot is here. This needs to be cleared out where we can get the trucks in here for mulch. Nice. We'll just go ahead and just tell you guys who we got doing what. Mr. Raj, Levi, and Josiah, you guys will be placing. Mr. Rainey's picking up tape now. Okay. So you guys will be placing the trees where we want them. Mac and Thomas, you guys are going to be working on the roadway to get down to the bottom, and we'll divide up into teams for the guys between you guys.
When are the trees coming in?
Right now, I told him they'll come in in the 26th. No, he said 26 is what I told him. But that's going to depend on two things. One is when we're ready and when the rains are.
Really, the process that we're going through is really a test plot to see what we're doing, because nobody's doing this. We're trying to plant a native forest to bring back that native forest that would have been here 2,000 years ago. So that comes with a lot of challenges.
This weed right here, the widow's garment, is really the opposition to the Garden of Eden. The prophets say this land will be returned to, it will become the Garden of Eden. But before that, it says that it'll be desolate and it'll be totally destroyed. And this right here is a sign. And now the time's changing, and that the time for redemption, the time for this, the Garden of Eden is coming about. It says that when the Spirit of the Lord is poured out on this land, that the fruitful field will be counted as a forest. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now, is the fruitful field be counting as a forest, and that's what we're a part of, is seeing that redemption happen. And to see this complete turnaround from desolation to redemption.
So what we're doing is we're making a road. We have a road that gives us somewhat access up there, but so we're making a road from that road down to the valley. We're gonna be planting trees all through the valley and then up those terraces. So we gotta have a way to get mulch down to the valley to mulch the trees.
Being busy till we can earn a little piece of my mind. What does it mean?
Contract with the military, and they bring in the military, but private, as far as private owners, residential stuff, they don't sell it.
Sometimes we wait for someone that will come from heaven to save us, to redeem us. And we wait for a miracle that will change our situation, will change our life. I think that the recognition, you say recognize, to recognize the Word of God in the reality and to find a way to fulfill it. To, before the finding of the way, but to understand what God wants from us and to believe in it and to think how to fulfill it and to choose to fulfill it, and then to be committed to the Word and plant in the ground the roots, the tree. This is the miracle.
You know, I look back when we first started the project, and I really think we were a bit naive. Planting in this area, we worked here a lot, but never took new lands to be planted. The Arab situation here with the locals, they really are against the Jewish people and their settling of the land of Israel. So when there's a new Jewish plot of anything, there's going to be a war for it. Even if that is helping everybody, we're just planting trees. These trees are going to benefit everybody. Like, you don't even have to get political. Literally, this is a forest that could be planted. So, really, looking back, we were very naive to think that we weren't going to have issues, and that everybody would just accept the fact that we were doing a good deed by planting trees. So we started to be a little bit concerned that we were going to have issues when we started seeing more action. The local Palestinian village, we started seeing them more in that area. We started, the local security was a little bit alerted and there wasn't any roads at the time to even get anywhere close to there. I mean, we had really trekked in. It was a great forestation spot. It was a spot out in the middle of nowhere until we planted. It highlighted that area, and so we started to see a little bit of action.
The Arabs came up and tore up several hundred trees, ripped the cages out of the ground, tore the trees out of the ground.
We were a bit taken back, shocked, how in the world, who would do, especially after all the work we put into it, incredible amount of work. We said, who in the world would come and rip out these trees? So we thought, well, let's get the dogs out and put some security dogs in the area.
We bought dogs. We put some dogs out there. We were training the dogs.
The training was going great. They were brilliant dogs, learning quickly. And we had a couple more months to go at the time, but they were really picking it up fast. And so we went ahead and put them down near the project.
I was in the office at the time, and Tessa and Mac were going down to train and feed the dogs that morning.
So Mac and I were in charge of coming out and feeding the dogs out here in the forest every day. And Wednesday morning when we came out, we noticed a bunch of the trees were knocked out.
When I first saw that, I was driving, so I started driving a little faster. Flew up to the spot where we usually parked and jumped out, and the dogs weren't barking or anything.
So as soon as we saw them not there, we both took off up there because we both were pretty attached to them, I guess. Both of them were gone, and the cage was all warped out of shape. We're guessing what happened is they came in, ripped out about 250 trees, and then went up and stole our dogs. I was really mad. when I first saw they were gone because I really liked the dogs, and I guess we kind of got along pretty good.
It was a big blow, you know, that here we had invested so much.
I mean, here we were, we beat again. Like, how could that happen? That you know, you steal the trees, and now you like, it wasn't even a thought that you could steal our security dogs. Like, that this was like our only hope now that you weren't going to pull out the rest of the trees.
Can you read me? I don't know if you can read me from down here. I copy that. I'm not
We immediately set up several posts up from our camp watching the village below to see if we could spot them. We found a couple dogs that looked like our dogs. One of them I'm pretty sure was. We called the military, told them, look, hey, we think we've spotted them. We think we know where they are. They ended up getting together, putting together a operation, and going in to see if they could find the dogs in the middle of the night. We've spotted the house where they have them, and we've seen both of the dogs there. And the military's now going in to do a house search, see if they can find them.
So we're coming in to watch with our binoculars. We got soldiers coming in from all directions.
כן, שמעתי. אוקנה אומר לי זה נקבה.
מצאנו פה כלב דומה לשלך, נקבה. הם אומרים שהכלבים שירדו פה הם לא ראו אותם. עשנו בכל הבתים, כל החצרות.
הבנתי.
וזהו, אנחנו מנתקים מגע, אחי.
טוב.
התמונה שראיתם מהרחפן זה לא הכלב שלכם.
טוב.
זה כלבה שקוראים לו לוסי. סבבה?
הבנתי. ברור זה נקבה, נכון? ברור?
כן, אני בדקתי שזה נקבה.
טוב, בסדר. טוב, יאללה, ביי ביי. טוב, ביי ביי.
In the face of these things, even though it was hard to see that, we had to pick our heads up and keep moving and keep going. And that's what I felt like is, you know what, this incident has made me want to do this even more, is to plant more trees, to see more life put into the soil.
The harder that I try, the harder it becomes. And I feel like giving
Let's see someone over there. Let's see how can we see him.
We're headed down to the forest site to test the camera. We have these new infrared cameras, so they're going to see if they can see us on that black hillside that you can't see anything. So the infrared cameras, they should be able to pick us up, and so obviously that will help with any infiltration attempts or anything like that.
Where do you want us to go? Do you want us to go to the valley or stay here at the top?
Go ahead and go to the valley.
Copy that.
Cause I try and try just to fall back down again. And I ask myself why do I try to chase the wind? I should lean into the mystery. Maybe hope is found in the melody. So I wanna try again. Oh, I'm gonna try again.
was in late spring. We were literally the next day, we were going to put in fire breaks. We were bringing the equipment down. We had the Bobcat and the skid steer, and the excavator. We were going to come down and put in fire breaks. It was literally on the schedule for the next day to do this. I got a call from the head of security saying, hey, there's a fire down by the tree. I got the gator, grabbed the fire paddles, threw them in there. We all jumped out, took off down here, and the wind was blowing like crazy. I pulled down on the top road coming down to where it looked like the fire was coming from, but the wind was too strong. There was really nothing we could do from that side. So I said, listen, we need a couple guys. I said, Zach, you, and a couple guys stay here with you to watch this side to make sure it doesn't jump the road. I'm gonna take the other couple guys down with me to the other side. We jumped in the gator, drove over to the other side, and it was the wind was just blowing like crazy. We were down here in about 5 minutes from the time I got the call, and most of the trees were already burned.
So you got looking right there. Right here?
I was there in Jerusalem, and I got this phone call, and Nate says there's a huge fire on the mountain. I got back up here, and as soon as I left Jerusalem quickly and came back up north here, and I got here, I jumped in the gator to go down, and it was just like nothing. The fire was, by the time I got here, it was done. Everything was just a pile of ashes. I just remember sitting there, just what in the world, like thinking, how can we recover this? Like all the dreams and thoughts of, changing the nation of Israel, greening the entire land of Israel. When you're planting one little tree in an entire nation, it's fairly desolate. You feel like you're making a little bit of impact when you come and you sit at that spot where you just made a little, like you just barely touched a, greening an area, and then it's all piled up in ash.
We were so connected to it. It was like, we wanted to give just everything we had to save these trees and to save this forest.
Well, we're going to replant. Not sure exactly how we're going to do that or when we're going to do that, but we're going to replant, and we're hoping that it'll be times 10. Bigger. We're going to put more roads in. We're going to put more infrastructure. More fire breaks, bigger fire breaks. Little Garden of Eden we had going here. Just going to take us a little more time now, I guess. But once we get this one going, there'll be more to come, I guess.
In my research in years previous, I had come across a watering system that they were using in the Sahara Desert called a Groasis water box. And that system essentially collects moisture from the air, it collects condensation and dew and rain, and then feeds that through a wick straight down on the tree.
I've got the Groasis boxes here. First off, it's got a nice little wick on the bottom, and that's what lets the water out onto the tree. So that goes right to the base of the tree to let the water out of it. You can see it comes through right here. This holds about 15 liters of water. So we put this together to collect dew and condensation from the air and rain. So the rainwater or dew collects on top, goes straight down into these little spouts, which puts it right down to the water. and then condensation actually collects on the bottom of this and runs it down into the same pool of water there. So there's very little evaporation that happens out of this box. It's one of the big advantages to this.
1 part water and 1 part dust, yet you're still making trophies out of us. Making something out of nothing, it's what you do. Yet your work is never finished and it's never passed through. Gently your voice like a calming race calls me from out of the noise. You whisper to me, child, forget not your dreams, as we lie awake in the dark. Just don't lose heart.
There was never a moment when I was going, all right, I'm throwing in the towel. I'm done with this. It was a, you know what? We're going to replant. It wasn't a matter of if, it was, you know, when. And I think that's how all of us felt, is we're going to replant. We have to. You know, this is, we're making this the Garden of Eden. That's the prophecies, and that's what's going to happen, is this is going to be a Garden of Eden. And I believe we're a part of that.
There's a real good feeling to having overcome something. And when you have the challenges that we've overcome and seen, I tell you, there's not a lot of words to say. It's really just a miracle. You know, my vision for the continued process of, you know, this forestry project, I have huge dreams. Like, the dreaming just continues. Every time we get an answer, we seem to add a couple more years to the project on new ideas of what we're going to develop and create. And we're planting forest all over. We've planted all the way down into the south now. That we're even planted in the deepest deserty areas with this system.
One of the things I've always asked, Lord, and I think a lot of us do, is to be used in a way that glorifies Him. And so one of my things is that I like trees, and I like Israel. And so these two things come together perfectly, because we've got an intermediator, in this case it's Hayavel, that gives the opportunity for people to be a part of this program. Because if I like trees and Israel's over there, it wouldn't make any difference, because there was not that connector. But Hayavel has been that connector. I'm just so thankful about that, because trees to me mean a lot. They mean a lot to other people, and people like to leave on legacies. But if you plant a tree, man, you got something that's going to last a long time.
It was really rewarding to see the trees, and to see them now, you know, so green, and just that they're growing like crazy coming out of these water boxes. And it's really a fulfilling feeling, seeing the land responding, seeing the trees respond to the water, to see all of these things just coming to life, and to know that the future of this is going to be massive.
It's much bigger than ourselves. It's something that I believe God is doing. He's really passionate. God's passionate about his people. He's passionate about this land. We're going to see this land restored, and I just believe that we've got a little part to play.
I'm definitely not going to see the full extent of it in my lifetime, but the whole reason for planting the forest is not for me. It's for future generations. It's to see the land restored, and that's what my heart is to see. And I want to see this happen on every mountain, the whole area covered.
Hey guys, I'm Joshua Waller, Director of Operations at Hayuvel and show host at the Israel Guys. We've got an incredible program we've just begun, the Greening Israel program. We've served Israel's farmers now for 18 years with incredible success. The farms are booming. We've seen amazing success there. Now we're opening this new program, Greening Israel. We need your help to do it. It's just one tree at a time. We plant those trees in the land. You know, we're planting indigenous forests. This is really what sets us apart from every other tree project you've ever heard about. The indigenous forest, literally the biblical forest returning to the heartland of Israel. Can't get more biblical than that. We need your help to do it. You guys can go to greeningisrael.com to be a part of it today.